We're moving into the part of the show where I get to look at growing figs in cold climates. And today you'll hear a chat that I had with greenhouse operator John Biberich from Wolfcreek Farms in Grove City, Pennsylvania. And John and his wife Sue grow figs and citrus in the greenhouses where they used to grow bedding plants. So now, here's my chat with John. On the line with me, I have John Biberich from Wolfcreek Farm in Grove City, Pennsylvania. And John and his wife Sue have started growing figs in their greenhouses. John, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks, Steve. I'm glad to be here.
I'd like to start, John, by just asking you how you got into figs. I know you have a long background in horticulture, but what got you into growing figs?
Well, I'll tell you what, for 40-some years, we had 8 greenhouses here, and we grew bedding plants, and we supplied all from Pittsburgh and West Virginia clear up into Erie and a large area, even into Maryland. Mm-hmm. And everything was nice when we started. There was no Lowe's, there was no Home Depot, there was no Walmart, so on and so forth. It got to the place where grocery stores started to sell plants instead of just groceries. It just got to be an overload of it. And we just got to the place that, people didn't even have to know how to germinate plants because they could buy plugs that were already started. And what we've always done is we followed a natural approach. We were probably some of the last people, well, we still do, make our own potting soils with compost and natural fertilizers like Revita and, seaweed and kelp and different things such as this.
Okay.
So we decided also there were no young people that wanted to come in and work anymore, and we had been doing it for so long that we decided we would do something different. And I told my wife, I said, what we need to do is we need to do something that is unique. And I said, especially, things that can't be mechanized very easily. And I've always been intrigued by figs, and my wife and I have pretty much done for ourselves over the year. We can and dry and put up foods. We heat with wood. Our house is 175 years old, and it's a lifestyle that we've followed for a good many years. So I said, figs will only last for such a short period of time when they're off of the tree. And I said, what do you see when you go to a grocery store? Well, you see dried figs, and if they ship figs from, say, California, they have to be picking them, really before they're truly ripe. Mm-hmm. And I said, I don't know, why don't we do figs in one greenhouse and let's do citrus in the other? So we took one greenhouse and we did figs, and the other greenhouse we do lemons, limes, and we even have an avocado tree in there. And I said, let's do something that is actually difficult to get into. Mm. And the whole thing is that we find that a lot of times when we do some of the stuff that we're, for all practical purposes, we're like Wilbur and Orville Wright, because there aren't a lot of people that you can fall back on in relation to this. And we also do strawberries in grow containers that I built in, also in hanging baskets in that, because strawberries and apples are some of the what should I say, most sprayed fruits that we have, and we wanted to do it without, the chemicals.
And what do your customers think about you having figs and citrus now? What's the reaction?
Well, I tell you what, we've got 70 fig trees in one greenhouse, and people, they go to the door and they look in and say, my gosh, it's a jungle. I said, yeah, it is. It really is. What it was interesting to us is how many people who have never actually eaten a fresh fig. And they're amazed. They're amazed by the taste. Some people say, well, I don't know whether I like figs. I said, well, have you ever eaten fig Newtons? Oh, well, yeah. I said, well, that's a Cadota fig. That we've got 8 different varieties here, and I explained some of the differences. And we have Chicago Hardies, and then there's a brown turkey figs, and both of those can do rather well around here if you give them some protection.
And so when you have customers who decide to try to grow figs on their own,
What are a couple of the tips you give them?
Well, basically, what I tell them is if they want to put them in the ground, they can do what the old Italians used to do down around Newcastle. They literally buried their figs in the fall, and then dug them up in the spring. But the easiest thing to do, and you can do this, the two hardiest ones I think that we have are basically the brown turkey and the Chicago hardy. But I like the idea that an old Italian fellow showed me, a gentleman by the name of Emilio Mangione. And he had carts, and he put his fig plants in containers on the carts, and when the cold weather would come around, they went into his garage. Now, the garage wasn't heated, but it was enough to give them the protection that they needed. And then when the spring would come around, he'd pull the carts back out, and he enjoyed them through the summer and harvested his figs. And it's probably one of the easiest things that I know of that you can do around here.
Yeah, very simple way to do it. Well, do you have any crops in mind next? You've got the figs and the citrus, and you mentioned avocado. Are there any other things that you're playing with?
Well, we have a self-fertilizing avocado that we're trying in one greenhouse, and with the citrus, and we have everything separated on because the citrus needs more heat than the avocado, than the figs do, and strawberries in one greenhouse. But another thing that I've been working on is elderberry cuttings, and around here there used to be elderberries everywhere. And I think that a lot of the governments in that, they spray the ditches and everything, and I think it's wiped out a lot of the elderberries.
John, thank you very much for sharing your fig experience with us. I hope we can have you on the show at a future time to check in on how your fig harvest is going.
Well, that is nice, and what I tell anybody, if you're a small grower, try to pick something that they can't mechanize. And I think that this is one of the situations with figs, because when you get it right off of the vine, you're getting it the way it should be. And another thing I'd recommend to people is raspberries, because nobody's come up with a machine to harvest them mechanically. And this is why I think elderberries, but so much of what we're doing in life is geared to very high production and large corporate interests. And for the small grower, try to pick something, that nobody else, and find a niche is what I'm trying to say. Okie doke?
That's great. Thank you, John.
Okay. Nice talking to you, Steve.
Nice chatting.
That was a chat I had with John Biberich, a greenhouse fig grower in Grove City, Pennsylvania. John and his wife Sue started growing greenhouse figs and citrus as they were looking for unique crops that give them a place in an industry that's increasingly reliant on automation and dominated by discount and big box stores. So it's a neat idea to consider for people thinking of how to carve out a niche in horticulture.